Reverend Strickland, in his book, Think, Feel, and Heal, tells about a friend of his who had a cancerous brain tumor, which they removed as much as they could, but they couldn't get all of it. And the man told his family, I could have gotten more checkups over the years. And he encouraged other people to make sure you get appropriate checkups for your health. And he, was a man of faith, and he lived the next couple of years. He lived a couple more years, and he was happy and joyful and enjoyed his family. But he always came back to, I could have gotten more checkups. And that is what we're talking about today as far as key number 8 to health and wholeness is taking authentic action. Taking authentic action. If you have a situation in your life physically, we've pretty much been focusing on, healing the body, but it can be applied to other areas of our life as well. Healing relationships, finances, and emotional, and whatever else might be. But primarily we've been focusing on the body and healing. Maybe you have something going on in your body or your life. Is there some authentic action that you could be taking? You see, in the series up to now, we've been talking about developing a healing consciousness. We've talked about having an attitude of gratitude, living in a state of gratitude, giving thanks in advance, key number 1. And we talked about believing in the possibility of being healed. And we talked about tuning in to divine love, living in a place of love in our life, because love is attractive and is sort of a healing balm to our consciousness and our life. And then we talked about attuning our will with the divine will and seeking to follow that as much as we can in our life. And we said faith is focusing. We all have faith. Focus your faith as a grain of mustard seed. A grain of mustard seed focuses on becoming what it knows itself to be. And we said focus your faith on your spiritual essence, your wholeness, knowing your spiritual essence, and utilizing the power of the imagination to see yourself as the way you want to become, and making sure that the images you're hanging in the living room of your mind reflect the good you want to experience in your life. And then last week we talked about key number 7, which was forgiveness. So today, taking authentic action. Doing the things that we've been talking about is developing a healing consciousness. That is key. That is very important. That's the essence, isn't it? And there might be some authentic action that we need to take. The Quaker said, pray and move your feet. Pray and move your feet. There may be something that you actually need to do, because some people can hide behind spirituality. They can be, well, I'm praying about it. Over the years as a minister, you hear about churches with some problems, and well, let's just pray about that individual as havoc continues to go on. Or someone with a health challenge. Well, I'm praying about the health challenge. I know God is going to take care of it. You've probably heard that old story, but it makes a good point, that joke kind of, where a flood happens in the neighborhood and this person moves from the first floor to the second floor, and the water rises and a boat comes by and says, hey, why don't you get in the boat? We'll take you to safety. And the person says, no, that's okay. God is going to help me. And the boat goes off. And then the water keeps rising, so they move up to the roof. And next thing you know, a helicopter flies over and they send a rope down. Hey, climb up into the helicopter. And the person says, no, that's okay. God's going to save me. And then the water rises up over the person's head and they drowned. And they're in heaven. And St. Peter says, what happened? How come you didn't, accept help? Well, I don't know what happened. I kept trusting and having faith God would save me. And St. Peter said, but God tried. He sent you a boat and he sent you a helicopter. And you denied all of them. Right? There's a time for authentic action. Taking action. And that can be one of the most challenging things for people to do, because you're putting your money where your mouth is, right? You're putting your faith where your mouth is, and taking action. I mean, my beloved mother, she ultimately died of breast cancer. And for a long time, and I didn't know this until it was too late, she had symptoms. But I guess she was just afraid to go and find out what was happening. She was afraid to go to the doctor and find out what's happening. And I think one doctor actually gave her a wrong diagnosis too, so there was that as well. But her fear kept her from taking action sooner rather than later. And that happens. And she was a spiritual person. But if we're given into our fear, if we're given into, not wanting to face what's in front of us, it's probably not going to be very helpful. You know the old saying, if you bury your head in the sand like an ostrich, you expose a very sensitive area. And that's what we've got to. Maria Nemeth, I took a workshop with her many years ago, and she wrote a book called Energy and Money, and another book. She was on Oprah for it and so on, and John mentions her in his book. She used to talk about look, see, tell the truth, and take authentic action. Look, see, tell the truth, and take authentic action. Which means, to me, look at what's going on, tell the truth to yourself about what's going on, which, in the case of my mother, she could have told her the truth. Hey, this could be cancer. This could be very serious. And if I don't face it, I'll leave the planet early. Whatever the problem might be. It could be in a business. It could be issue with an employee or a boss or in a relationship. People who are in an abusive relationship and they're telling themselves, but I love him and he loves me, and yet, being abused, being hit or verbally abused, you have to look at that and go, is that really loving? Whatever the situation is. In fact, he tells a story in his book about he was having an ache in his back. And he went to the doctor, and the doctor couldn't really find any real reason for the ache. And he asked him, who is the ache in your back? And as he thought about it, there was an employee in his church who he had been having problems with. And he had to look and see and acknowledge that, and how much aggravation it had been causing him and turmoil. And he had to tell himself the truth about that. And then he had to take authentic action, which was he had to talk to this employee, and they discovered this is really not a great fit for you. And he helped him find another job and so on. That would be a good fit for him. But he had to tell himself the truth. Look and see, tell yourself the truth, and then take authentic action. That's a spiritual quality. In the yogic teachings, they talk about the path of wisdom. the path of wisdom, which is being able to see things as they are. See things as they are, not as we wish them to be, not as we think they should be, not as we hope they would be, but as they are, so that we can then deal with them effectively. Right? Yes. Seeing things as they are. Many years ago, I read a study. Paul Ekman was maybe still is, I think he's still around. He was an expert in teaching people how to know when someone is lying. Apparently, it's a very, very difficult thing to actually know. I mean, we all hear the stuff about, do they look you in the eyes? But liars know all that, right? They know that stuff. That's not the key. And so he's worked with policemen and psychologists and military and all different kinds of people to help them be able to learn to see nonverbal communication. You know who the best were at being able to detect someone lying? Tibetan monks. And I thought, isn't that interesting? Probably because they were present, not to what they wanted to see, not to what they hoped to see, not by their judgments or stereotypes, but by what was right in front of them. They were present to it. So seeing what we're dealing with and then taking the action that we need to take. Think about your situation. Maybe it's a physical challenge. Maybe it's some other challenge in your life. Is there some authentic action that you need to take that would help you? And maybe it wouldn't resolve it, but it would at least take you one step closer. So that causes us to face with the fear of failure, right? The fear of failure, and we all heard the Edison failed 10,000 times to develop the light bulb, and his assistant was, why are we continuing to do this? You're just failing. And Edison said, I'm not failing, I'm learning. I learned 10,000 ways that don't work. It's not failure, it's results. So taking authentic action to move yourself in the direction of what you need to do. And I think that that may mean going to a doctor. That may mean following what the doctors instruct us to do. That also means listening to ourselves. I think taking more responsibility for our own health and healing as well. That doesn't mean don't go to a doctor. It may mean that, but it means when you go to a doctor, what do they ask you? They ask you, so, how long have you had this? Don't they? And you go, I don't know, 6 weeks, 2 years. And then they go, well, when do you find it happening and whatever, right? So if you're aware, now this is where I believe in taking authentic action, using our awareness to be part of the healing process. Instead, if we go to a doctor or whoever, instead of letting them give us all the answers and just thinking, they're going to solve all the problems. How many of you have been to a doctor or another person who is in the healing arts or whatever, and you go in and you expect them to just know exactly what you got to do, and they're going to give you the answer, and they can't give you the answer. Or whatever they tell you, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Sometimes that's the case. They can't help you. Why? Because they're human beings too, and the medical profession is still learning and growing and so on itself. Sometimes, and I think going with as much awareness as you can, so that when you're asked questions, you know yourself the answers, and becoming more aware of your own physical body or whatever the problem is, and noting it, using your awareness. This one young man, he was a businessman, had a family, and he had these stomach problems. And he was advised, when do you have those, his coach actually, when do you have these problems? When do they occur? I want you to be aware and try to pinpoint when do they occur. And crazy thing, he discovered that when he came home from work, he was tired and whatever, he would take his dinner and he would sit on the floor and turn on the TV and eat his dinner, and he was sort of hunched over while he was eating, and his stomach was not digesting the food properly. Only through awareness. Now, they could have run all kinds of tests. They could have had all kinds of theories of what was the problem. It was his own awareness of his life and what he was doing that helped him discover the answer. And I believe that's a very important thing that all of us can do. No matter what we face, whether it's physical challenges or another area of our life, using our awareness to discern what might be going on for us. Now that takes high spiritual evolution to be aware. Let's not take that for granted. That's high spiritual understanding, to be aware of yourself and your habits and what you're doing and being able to connect the dots, and it's not easy. I've had challenges in my life, and still do, that I have found it very helpful to journal about what's going on, when does it happen, trying to discern what might be the triggers for these things that are going on, and being part of the solution. Not just, well, this is going on, let me go to the doctor and find out. Yeah, go to the doctor if you feel you need to go to the doctor. First of all, practice the healing consciousness we've been talking about. There's an old saying in Truth Principles, first to God and then to man or woman as God directs. Right? First to God and then to man or woman as God directs. So you start with consciousness and you continue with consciousness and you pray and move your feet. What are the things that make sense to do? And I found developing a greater awareness of what might be contributing to what's going on and being aware of when it happens and so on. I remember many years ago, about 12 years ago, I started waking up in the morning with a sore lower back. And I was like, and it became repetitive. Sore lower back in the morning. I'm sure somebody here is like, oh, what's the big deal? I've had a sore lower back for 20 years. Anyway, for me, that was new. It was like, wait a minute, sore lower back. Now, you have a couple options. You could go, oh, well, getting older. I guess that's what comes with age, a sore lower back. That was not my attitude. My attitude was, I want to have perfect health all my life. As a child of God, created in the image of God, I want to have perfect health all of my life, which means forget the worldview of, well, I'm getting older, I must be getting older, I can't remember, I must be getting older. Forget that. I'm not going to affirm that. I'm not going to give that energy and power. No. So I started to think about what could I do, what authentic action could I take to help that situation. Started to do yoga postures to strengthen my back, and I started to do research of mattresses. What are some, maybe I don't have the best mattress. Let me do some research and find a good mattress. And I did a lot of research and I tried a lot of different stuff, and the pain went away. Pain went away. What is some authentic action that we can take in our lives that can help? That can help. Maybe there's a situation that we have in our physical body that gets triggered by stuff, but we don't know what it is. That's where a journal can be helpful, you know? Writing down, what did I eat today? What could be a factor in this situation? What could have triggered this thing that I'm experiencing? And Myrtle Fillmore, who was diagnosed with 6 months to live with tuberculosis, she looked into her consciousness and she was like, what are some of my attitudes that might be contributing to my lower well-being? And she found some attitudes that she held within herself that were contributing to her consciousness maybe not being as healthy and strong as it could be. Now, this looking and seeing, telling the truth, and taking authentic action is not about self-blame. It's not about self-blame and self-condemnation, right? Yes. It's not about, oh, I must be doing something wrong. No. It's simply about, hey, we're living and growing, and who knows, there are a lot of factors involved, right? There are a lot of factors involved. We may not know all those factors involved. Look, for the last 10 years, I have struggled with a migraine headache once a week. Once a week. Sometimes more. Sometimes more. Now, daily prayer and meditation, a positive attitude, and so on and so forth are all helpful. And I've been to doctors, I've been to osteopaths, I've been to neurologists, and none of them ultimately could really help me. And the thing that's helped me the most is journaling and looking for triggers, because it's not stress. The osteopath was like, I don't understand it. You don't look at all stressed out at all. You don't look like any of my other patients who have headache, issue. I don't know what's going on. I don't know. I'll have to think about it. Well, I didn't go back to him, but but journaling and discovering, it's a structural thing. I used to wrestle as a kid. I was a wrestler. I played football when I was a kid. I ran into trees. I had things dropped on me. And I used to box when I was a kid. There was a lot of trauma to the physical body early on. And my sister gets the headaches in the same area in her head. Maybe there's a genetic thing. I don't know. But through taking authentic action, through journaling, I have learned when it starts to get triggered, what I can do to greatly lessen it, sometimes eliminate it, or to notice triggers that trigger it, and to avoid those triggers. Like if I get a cell phone, I just recently got on TikTok. How many of you know TikTok? Boy, it's pretty entertaining. That thing is dangerous. You can get involved in TikTok and get sucked down a rabbit hole with no problem. You're like, oh my God, oh look, isn't that amazing? And you can the other morning I got caught in that. I was let me just look at a couple of them. And I'm here for 10 minutes looking at my phone like this. Guess what? This is a trigger. This is all I had to do, 10, 15 minutes looking at this down here, and I could feel it start. And then it expanded, and it got worse. And sometimes I've approached it with denial and affirmation and, a half hour of there is no pain and whatever. So what am I saying? Use your awareness to take authentic action. You are part of your healing process. And I'll tell you, it's been wonderful because I don't suffer as much. And I avoid the triggers much more. And I know how to eliminate it a lot easier and deal with it a lot more effectively. Why does it happen? Who knows? But it happens, and you have to deal with it. You see, sorry for the disillusionment for some people who think, oh, everything must be perfect for him. He's a minister and meditates and, he has all these spiritual teachings. A lot of spiritual teachers, they don't want to share that stuff with you because they want to think that, everything is just perfect and all that. And I get people who think, that guy's so happy and enthusiastic, he doesn't have any challenges in his life. Wrong. But we have tools to deal with them. And we have tools to deal with life and move through it in the best way that we can. Yogananda talked about having a faith in which you are calm amidst the crash of breaking worlds. And sometimes that crash of breaking worlds is very personal. Sometimes that crash of breaking worlds is a health issue. Sometimes it's a relationship issue. Sometimes it's a work issue. Sometimes it's financial. Who knows what it is, but we're seeking to live in a centeredness amidst the crash of breaking worlds. Like that man who wished he had gotten more checkups, but he didn't, and then he died of cancer a couple of years later. That's a crash of breaking worlds, but he was centered in love, and he was centered in joy, and he lived those last few years fully and completely. And I think that's a wonderful place to be. Because, when you live your life seeking first the kingdom, and you live your life in a spiritual way, ultimately it doesn't matter how long you live. If I left the planet today, I feel so fulfilled in the life that I have lived. And I'm not planning to, but if I did, if I left today, it would be fine. I feel totally satisfied with the life that I've lived. And I'm happy to continue, and I've got a lot more things to do. I've always said, if you're still on the planet, God is not finished with you yet. There's still more for you to do. So what in your life are you not looking at? What in your life are you not seeing? Are you telling yourself the truth about it? I've had people share with me problems at home, a situation with a daughter or a son or something like that they're not really being honest with themselves about. They're still seeing them as my baby. I have to take care of my baby. Their baby's 45 years old, with children and a wife, my baby. You got to look at the truth and look at it. Wait a minute, that's an adult. That's an adult. Time for the adult to learn how to stand on his or her own 2 feet. What are you looking at and you need to tell yourself the truth about? That's very important. And then what is the authentic action that you can take in your own life, that whatever you're facing, what is the authentic action that you can take for yourself? Do you have a next step for yourself? I want you to, in your mind, to think about what is the next step that I can take that would help me live with greater health and wholeness. Does everybody in here have a next step that you can take? Are you excited about taking that next step in your life to help bring forth some kind of wholeness, greater expression of life in your life? How many of you are excited about taking that next step? Say aye. Aye. Let me hear you again. Aye. Hey, all right, good. Take that next step. That's taking authentic action. Reverend John Strickland texted me recently. He was a football player, got a football scholarship to college when he was younger, and he's had some knee issues, and he recently texted me and said, I'm scheduled for surgery in November. I'm taking authentic action. So that's the message for us today, is to take authentic action. Let's get still, and we acknowledge that as spiritual beings, as children of God, there is that of us, our awareness, our consciousness, that is not our mind, that is not our body, that is not our emotions, but our awareness. When we say I'm in here, you're in there. That is whole. That is spirit. That is spirit being you. You are whole. You are the observer. And so we are open and receptive to the guidance, to the wisdom, to the love, to the life, to the healing activity flowing in us, through us, as us, circulating throughout our body. And in the process, we let go of blame. We don't blame ourselves. We don't get angry about it. We don't get angry at God. We just acknowledge, okay, how can I learn from this? How can I grow from this experience? What can I learn from this experience? And what is the next step that I can take? Thank you, God, for guiding us and directing us. Thank you for showing us the way, teaching us the lessons that we're here to learn for our own well-being and greater strength. Thank you for healing, Father, Mother, God. And so it is. Amen.